Great question, and thank you for the opportunity. I've been blessed with a career in economic and workforce development, the better part of my career in Fargo. And I believe that communities and business thrive on growth. And so it's always been one of my long-held beliefs is strategy around growth that leads into job creation, creating opportunities for individuals, as well as the current challenges of available workforce and workforce development. Equally important is public safety. So adequate police and fire protection for residents is a top priority for people in our region. And so that's a second area that we continue to focus on to retain and recruit qualified leaders in the fire and law enforcement profession. And then third is investments in infrastructure. Very important that we complete the FM diversion, as well as continue to advance water supply for our region, as well as the local city infrastructure upgrades. I graduated from college a number of years ago and had the opportunity to begin my career in higher education, and then advanced into economic development. And the better part of my career has been in economic development, both as a practitioner when I worked for the Fargo-Cass County EDC, as well as the first director over 11 years launching the development of the NDSU Research and Technology Park. Additionally, I served 22 years in the state Senate, and as a citizen legislature by its nature, I focused a lot on higher education policy, business climate, and moving our community forward. So I think my business acumen, my sensitivity and careful spending and the budget controls to public-private partnerships and network have positioned me well to continue to serve as a Fargo City Commissioner. Great question. I could answer that pre-COVID or post-COVID-19. Our state is going to go through some significant financial challenges, but at a high level, that the notion or the term legacy means lasting impact for generations in my mind. And so no specifics yet because of many ideas are being shared around the state, but clearly moving the state forward as a place to people to want to live, work, and play will advance business interests, as well as making sure those investments are sound for the next generation. And what I hope doesn't happen is we fund general government out of the legacy fund, because then that really, in my opinion, does not position us as creating a legacy for our state in future generations.
My three priorities from the beginning have been lowering property taxes and special assessments, as well as bringing fiscal responsibility to the City Commission. Accomplishing these three things is going to put more working capital in the pockets of business. That's going to draw more people to Fargo, which is going to help with our workforce issues, and it's just going to help everybody overall. So those have been my priorities, and that's what people have told me they want. Well, I've got a bachelor's degree in business management, and I graduated with honors. I'm a retired U.S. Army soldier with 2 combat tours overseas. While in the military, I've worked through a various bunch of jobs: budget manager, logistics specialists, held key leadership positions which require critical thinking and personnel management, all things that will help me with the City Commission position. On the civilian side, I've worked for everything as a cook all the way up to a mechanic into a management position, which is where I'm at now, which allows me a perspective to see things from more than just one point of view. I can see it as an employee, a businessman, business owner, and it's just a really good perspective to be able to see everything from every angle. Well, the legacy fund, to discuss that, it requires a 2/3 vote to dip into the principal of the fund. So we really can't touch that unless the legislature votes that we can use it. But we've got the interest, and we can use the interest throughout the state. Now, obviously, that's the state money, and other cities are going to want a piece of that too. But we've already got things coming in from like the Prairie Dog program and things like that, all which can be used to help lower those taxes, lower those special assessments, put that money back in the pockets of the people so we can have a more vibrant and a more ability to invest with our cities and get people to spend money, get people to work here, get people to live here.
Well, certainly businesses can't thrive or be strong if we don't have a thriving neighborhoods, if we don't have thriving families, and if we don't have a thriving workforce. So those are the 3 top issues. And in achieving that, or ensuring that those 3 issues are thriving, we need to have affordable and attainable housing options for everyone along the income spectrum, property tax relief where that's possible, incentives to uplift aging neighborhoods, as well as we need living wages for individuals that are working, which workforce training is part of that, and supporting entrepreneurs. And finally, childcare access and affordability is another extremely important aspect. I served on the City Commission between 1992 and 2000. During that time, I had as my portfolio, it was the Planning and Development Department, Police, Health, as well as a few others. During that tenure, we revised the Land Development Code, which helped in assisting with the planning for healthy neighborhoods. I also led the effort to develop and implement the first downtown redevelopment plan. So all of those experiences certainly helped, as well as the financial part of understanding the budgeting and the financial part of the city. Secondly, I was on the school board for 4 years. So during that time, I really began to and have been able to understand the issues facing education and the families that have school-aged children. Finally, I operated and owned my own business for 16 years. So human resource management, financial management, and all the challenges that businesses face are certainly very well known to me. First of all, with this pandemic, we have to make sure that we get our businesses up and running again and operating and stabilized so that individuals can be working again. We have to stabilize that. So, and it's not real clear at this point exactly how much the federal initiatives are going to meet those needs. So in my mind, the legacy fund could be used to fill some of those gaps. Secondly, and I've mentioned this already, childcare has been a struggle, I think, for every community for a long time. I certainly experienced it in my business with my 90 employees. So subsidizing childcare at a higher level, perhaps providing support for providers, as well as providing incentives for businesses to support childcare. And then finally, attainable housing. We can't have a workforce that can't afford to live in Fargo. So making sure that housing is attainable. And that could be done through a couple of different initiatives, one being perhaps a regional housing fund.
Top three, there's really only a top one, and that is the economy is in chaos right now. So the top three, I guess, is take care of the health of the community. I mean, you got this virus out there. I've got close friends that have got this virus, that have gotten over it. Some are getting tested. So it's really a mess right now. So if you don't take care of health, you don't have an economy. You can look at taxes. I mean, you know, Fargo's bond rating has been lowered because of decisions by the Fargo Commission. That needs to be looked at. Construction projects are out there. Those need to be either stopped or not bid. I mean, you kind of need to put a hold on everything until you get this health situation under control and people are confident, and you got to get people back to work. Well, I've got 35 years of construction experience as a registered professional civil engineer in North Dakota and Minnesota. I've bid, designed, managed drainage projects, infrastructure projects. And so I've been involved in city, state, federal projects for 35 years. So I know the ins and outs of bidding, designing, the budgets that go with that. And honestly, the Fargo Commission has totally botched and mismanaged some construction projects, some small, some large. And I just think they need better oversight. I don't know who's voting to go ahead with projects that have not even had a permit. And those projects have had to stop. Large projects have had to stop because they didn't even have a permit. I know the Corps of Engineers were looking at them for direction. Again, that's not the best agency to work with to keep a project on time within budget. So I think the private sector can do a lot better in the engineering community than the Corps has. Yeah, I think everybody wants to dip into the interest on the legacy fund and not touch the principal, which I think that's good sound fiscal advice. I like what Rick Becker is looking at doing and forgiving property taxes. Boy, that affects every Tom, Dick, and Harry in Fargo, every citizen, and it makes a whole boatload of sense. You know, if you want to do it statewide, great. Obviously, Fargo is in the state of North Dakota, so just forgiving or having paid your property tax every year, imagine what that does to getting people to come to work and live here. Some states have no income tax, some states have different incentives, but having no property tax, it's huge. I know it would definitely help me. I got a lot of friends that, because of the tax system in Fargo, are moving out of state, across the river in Minnesota, and that needs to stop. We've taxed ourselves into a point where people look at that first and wanting to live here, and they don't. A lot of them don't.
You know, if I'm elected again, I will continue the priorities that have evolved in the last year, which are affordable housing, affordable and accessible housing. I sincerely believe the FM diversion and the Red River Water Valley Supply Project are urgent needs for our community, especially in light of climate changes going on out there. We need to be prepared. And lastly, it's a bigger grouping. I would call it public and behavioral health, which includes addiction and prison reform. We have just a gargantuan problem out there with public health and addiction, and we need to get people into treatment rather than incarceration. So those are generally my three primary focuses. While I'm finishing my first term on the city commission, so I have 4 years of learning and getting my feet wet and doing my homework. Prior to that, I had 8 years experience on the Fargo School Board, which gives me a really good sense of the community, the reaches of the community, the demographics of the community, who the people are, where they are, and what their circumstances are. So those two give me great experience. And then lastly, I'd say virtually my whole adult life, being an entrepreneur and a business person, working with employees, working with growing businesses, working with all the elements of those aspects of being a business owner for over 20 some years with the High Plains Reader, and then of course 10 plus years before that in my medical sales work. Well, you know, everybody knows with the COVID crisis, everything has changed. A few weeks ago, all of these answers would have been different than they are now. My sense of the legacy fund right now is the state will be dipping into it and making a priority out of their needs. They need to keep their reserve funds solvent. They need to keep funding general government, and those are huge priorities. I don't, frankly, even know if we will. I hope, but I don't know that we'll access the Prairie Dog Fund, which we took those funds and applied them to infrastructure funding here locally, such as special assessments. So I'd like to present a wish list, but reality says that won't be the case. We will have different needs and different priorities, and everything will be evolving every month. We'll know more, but I think keeping the state solvent will be the first and highest priority.